Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, using encryption is a good thing, but it's just the start. We'll outline some important steps you can take to protect your privacy online. Plus, how one developer managed to completely own the Uber app, and then it's a great big batch of your questions, our answers, a rockin' roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 205 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on March 5th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, Ting, DigitalOcean, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, yeah, it rocks. It's powered by ScaleEngine. Go over to scaleengine.com and check them out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hello, Alan from the future.
Yes.
We are recording on the 5th for release next week because Alan is at Asia BSDCon.
At this time, it will be 4 a.m. on Friday, and I will be asleep.
Yeah. And I have no idea what I'm going to do. Actually, I already have a project plan for that Thursday. When there's no TechSNAP, which very rarely happens, right?
Right.
I'm going to clean out the studio garage because some of the equipment we've received, we've gotten too many boxes. So I'll be breaking down boxes while you're doing something way cooler, hanging out at Asia
I'll be sleeping.
Well, during that particular time,
it's an 11-hour time difference.
But this is one of your favorite ones, isn't it?
Yes. Tokyo is very interesting.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, you're going to get so much great food, and you're going to find new gadgets. I'm kind of jealous.
Well, and I'm just looking forward to information about packaging the base system for FreeBSD, the ZFS improvements to replication and stuff. Just lots of interesting stuff.
Just going to dig into it all there, huh?
Yep. Plus, we're going to hopefully get some more interviews and lots of fun stuff.
Well, we have got some great stories to break down this week. So while we're talking about Asia BSDCon, why don't we mention our first sponsor? Because guess what? They're going to be there. That's right. They're going to. In fact,
they're a big sponsor of the conference.
Yes.
Going to have a bunch of people there.
Yeah, they always do. So go to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP to learn more about the company that takes the time to really invest in the community and hires a lot of those people that work on some amazing things. And IX Systems will build a solution specific to your needs. And get started at ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Look at some of those rigs powered by those awesome Intel processors. And you're going to really get a hands-on experience with what I think is some of the best customer service in the business. Alan, you've been buying rigs for them for a long time. You agree with that statement, right?
Yes, and for a long time I hadn't used the support, so I didn't know how much different it was.
Didn't need it.
And then I had a hard drive die.
Yeah.
And around the same time I had one die at a machine that I didn't buy from them. And then the difference in the process of getting the replacement drive and the difference in the timeline in getting the replacement drive. And just, I think the biggest one was just they understand that the server might not be at your shipping and billing address. And the fact that they're like, oh, right, that server's in a data center in a different country than you are. So we'll make that happen for you.
I completely think it's one of these experiences when you go through and you go, well, I'll never do it any other way again. It really is like that.
I'm just not going to buy hardware from anyone else.
Yep.
I think the biggest one is just how hard I kick myself now from before because I just assumed they would be expensive. Turns out I don't even know how, but it was cheaper than when I was buying the raw hardware myself from a computer wholesaler and putting it together myself.
Not to mention the time savings.
My time. Not even counting my time. It
and
was
the expertise pool that you get to pull from with IX, which is just invaluable.
I was like, I don't know anything about SaaS multipath. You will have to tell me what to do. And they're like, oh, no problem. Here, watch this.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is somebody who's looked at a lot of systems for a long time, when you come across an IX system, there is obvious indications that a lot of thought and care went into the design and build of that system. I know when I first opened up my FreeNAS Mini and I looked inside for the first time and I saw just the way they'd managed the cables, but also the small touches like that tiny little USB nugget that they used to make it so that way I could reflash and have all of the storage on my array available for actual storage and not have to slice some of it off for the OS, and the way the firmware updates worked. And it's just so slick and so smooth. And I thought, they never even knew I was going to see that, and they still took the extra time to make it beautiful, to do a really good job, and it's like that top to bottom. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Go check them out. Tell them the TechSNAP show sent you, and if you're at Asia BSD Con, tell them that you heard about it here on the show. Give them a high five. Check out some of their goods.
Yes, be awesome. And speaking of that, a little bit actually, this week's episode of BSD Now will probably be out by the time you're watching this. We have a discussion segment about the history of PCBSD and how IX got involved and made it into what it is now, and kind of the plans for the future now that PCBSD is over the years managed to get to parity with Linux as far as having all the tools for configuring your Wi-Fi and all the little things that you might need to do, managing your sound from different apps and so on. Now that it's caught up to Linux, how it's actually going to surpass Linux in features and do some really interesting stuff.
Check it out. That'll be on what, 80? Is that episode 80
Yep.
if I'm counting?
Yeah, it's episode 80. And we also have a great interview there as well.
Now, Alan, I'm not worried. I'm honey a badger about security these days because I know that encryption has got my back. It's going to keep me safe from any woes that I might be out there in the cyber minefield of technology.
There's a couple of different considerations here. So,
Okay.
While using encryption is a good thing, it hides whatever you're communicating. It doesn't hide the fact that you are communicating. Right?
Right.
And, if they're advanced adversaries, then it doesn't stop. If you're a journalist or an activist protesting against a government or something, if you're in a hostile country and you're a journalist and you're reporting on them, they don't really care what it is that you're reporting. They just care that you are reporting it.
Yeah.
And so encryption isn't necessarily hiding that.
Right. And we've seen in the NSA revelations how valuable metadata is, truly.
Exactly. And, we've also seen that Tor isn't necessarily good enough. Right? The FBI has identified people even when they were using Tor and tracked them down and arrested them. So, just using Tor isn't necessarily good enough either. And so there's a great article over here at AlterNet. They also have, it's mostly just a reference to a bunch of other resources, but it's a really good thing to read through, especially if you're into this type of thing. But it's operational security for activists and journalists. And it kind of talks about the different considerations you have to consider, right?
Yeah.
The only protection against a communication system is to avoid using it, right? If you don't want your phone calls to be tapped, don't make phone calls.
Okay. Wow.
And they talk about a bunch of different things, but one of them is anti-forensics, right? It's all about reducing the quantity and quality of the information the adversaries acquire about you, right? In other words, if spies succeed in breaching into your computer, then give them as little useful information as possible. One way to achieve this is through compartmentalization, right? Keeping things separate, so that if they do get it, they get the one thing,
Sure.
not all the things,
Right.
And we've seen that technique honed by intelligence agencies like the KGB and the Mossad and so on. Especially important. Like to mention the only way to be secure against your comms being intercepted is not to use comms, is that really important government secrets are still passed by a courier, right? They send an actual person to
Right.
physically carry the message.
Yeah.
Because
If they transmit it,
yeah,
it can
even
at least
the
be
government
tracked if
doesn't
nothing
trust
else.
crypto 100%. Yeah,
Well, I mean, like you say, if nothing else, it can be tracked, and that's good enough
exactly.
or bad enough.
Whereas, if the government has a courier that goes back and forth once a day, every day, you can't tell whether they're carrying a secret message that day or not. Right? And then they talk more about, your cell phone is basically a giant tracking beacon. So maybe you want to be like some of the people from WikiLeaks and just not even have one. Or if you do need one, then, you have to, maybe you have your regular cell phone and, a secure cell phone. And then there's a bunch of considerations there about, not using them at the same time and not letting them create a pattern. But, avoid patterns like geographic or chronological. So if you have a separate secure cell phone you're going to do for your secret things, then don't always use it in the same place or at the same time, right? If they can predict when you're going to turn it on and make a call, if you do it at 5 o'clock every day, then they can be set up and waiting for you. Or if you go to a certain same hiding spot every time, then they can have their Stingray machine set up at that location. Whereas if they don't know where you're going to go, it's much harder for them to be set up with a Stingray. So really relocate to new spots during the course of the phone call, right? Keep moving and watching for people following you and so on. And, if you can get a range of them and they can't keep up, then you all of a sudden you're less insecure. Stay in motion. Also, phone calls should be kept as short as possible so that the amount of data collected by the surveillance equipment during the call's duration is minimized, and this will make it more difficult for spies to make accurate predictions about what's going on or where you're going to be or how the crypto worked or whatever. They say, also be careful about carrying additional mobile devices like a tablet or a second cell phone. This creates the risk that the peripheral hardware may undermine anonymity by correlation, right? So if they see the two phones in the same place a bunch, then they realize that, there's this secure phone that we're trying to track, but it's off a lot of the time. We can't track it. But it always seems to be in the same place as this not secure cell phone. So if we just track that cell phone, wherever it is, it's probably where the other one is too, right? And they also mentioned, if you have to buy extra a phone to have as your second phone or whatever, pay for it with cash, right? Credit card transactions are a big red flag. Even if, you think about it, it's like, well, it's my credit card and it's from the States and I'm not hiding from the Americans, it's not a big deal. It's like, yes, but, those credit card transactions will also be monitoring at the store in Eastern Europe where you bought the phone or whatever, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
In Japan, if you want to just rent a phone while you're there, you have to fill out a bunch of documents because they have very strict rules knowing about who has what phones.
Oh, really?
I think in Japan, I don't think it's even possible to get a burner phone in Japan. They're very picky. I could be wrong on that. Just stuff I was reading because I reserved a Wi-Fi mobile hotspot thing to carry around with me in Japan because my cell phone company tries to charge me $10 a megabyte for data in Japan. So it made more sense to just rent a mobile hotspot. Anyway, they say the spies somehow capture a secure cell phone and are able to siphon data off of it. One potential countermeasure is to flood the device with false information, right? So if you have a phone book on the device, if it's got 1,000 names in it and only 2 of them are real, then that makes it much harder for them to figure out which ones are the real ones, right? Or, if you're using an Android ROM or something, you could have something where it's constantly filling the call log with fake information so that if they get a hold of the phone, they can't tell which calls actually happened very easily. Now, eventually, they could probably go back to the carrier and see what's going on. But, you can do a bunch of things to at least slow them down and give you time to get away or whatever. They also say skillful application of the technique can lead spies on a goose chase. They say when Edward Snowden was fleeing Hong Kong, he intentionally bought a plane ticket to India with his own credit card in an effort to throw the pursuers off.
I remember that.
Going to India.
That was very clever.
Yeah. They also mentioned another time, when he was typing his password, he would hide under a blanket, apparently, so that he couldn't be filmed or, a camera couldn't see what he was typing on his keyboard. And like maybe you can just cover your fingers like you do at the pin pad at the bank machine or whatever. But, there are actual considerations of this stuff. Yeah. But they say, in summary, expect your security tools to fail. So you have to compartmentalize and have contingencies and backup plans and so on. Have to contain the damage. You have to assume that something bad's going to happen. So you have to plan for that, right? Rather than just assuming this is good crypto, I'll be fine. Because while the crypto may stand up, the application may not. Right? And apply the core tenets of anti-forensics. Don't put blind faith in technology and focus your resources on maintaining rigorous procedures because when things get dicey, it'll be your training and preparation that keep you secure, not the technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is very true. That was a good find, Alan. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yep.
I guess the moral of the story is don't use the system unless you're okay with being tracked. Even if it's encrypted, you're still going to be tracked.
Well, if you're really worried about being tracked, you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah. All right, Alan. Well, let's stop right here, take a quick moment, and thank our next sponsor, and that is Ting. Go to techsnap.ting.com to get the special TechSNAP sauce and also support the TechSNAP program. Why Ting? Because Ting is mobile that makes sense. No contracts. You just pay for what you use, a flat $6 per month. Yeah. Seriously, flat $6 per month. Plus, Ting has the most crazy badass dashboard you've ever seen from any cell phone company. This screenshot isn't like some CG screenshot of what their dashboard is like. It's their actual Ting dashboard is really this badass. It's a super sweet system. And the nice thing is when you have multiple devices, it doesn't get crazy at all. It's still really easy to manage everything. You can create high usage alerts. You can go in there and name your devices. So I have Chris's Nexus 5, Rikai's HTC One in there. So I can see, oh my gosh, look at all this data. Rikai's not really. Rikai's does great. But it really is a great system, and they mirror that with apps on your device. So managing your Ting count is really straightforward. And so you just pay for your usage, really, really low rates. It's very easy. And you don't have to worry about any contracts. And there's a lot of great ways to take advantage of Ting. So think about this, a service that has no contract and it's a flat $6. That could be extremely useful if you have a tablet sitting around that has an open GSM or CDMA SIM slot. You could take advantage and bring internet to that tablet for very little overhead, and that makes it way more useful. For example, up on the Ting site right now, if you go to techsnap.ting.com and then go shop, they have the Ting GSM SIM card for $9. Plus, going to techsnap.ting.com will give you a $25 service credit, okay? So you're going to get $25 worth of pay-what-you-use data for free. That's going to last you probably more than a couple of months on Ting. All you need to do is get a $9 SIM, and then you'll get our $25 discount. Whatever you put that SIM card in is going to get $25 worth of free data when you go to techsnap.ting.com for $9. There's no contract. There's no early termination fee. In fact, you can just go into their awesome dashboard and just turn it off when you don't want it for a little while. This is a great way to get some mobile access to something that's been sitting around. Or maybe you've got like my friend Chase has a really slick new security setup, and some of the devices have Ting GSM SIMs in them to do SMS text warnings and offload JPEG and movie images to an offsite storage when it needs to. And then he doesn't want to have a contract for that. He just, when it uses it, that's when he pays for it. It's really easy. Start by going to techsnap.ting.com. Check them out. Also, for those of you who are iPhone fans, you can get the iPhone 5 for $252 on Ting. No contract. Unlocked. techsnap.ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. You guys rock. Okay, Alan, so we've teased this last week, but everybody knows Uber now. And Uber is a super complex app that allows for a lot of dynamic pricing and conditions to be changed. So it would make sense that it probably has a few hidden tricks up its sleeve. And I guess...
Well, yeah, I guess when you mentioned how dynamic it is, because of the way cell phone apps work, when you want to change the app, you have to submit it to the App Store at Apple and Google and so on, and wait for them to approve it and so on. So when apps want to add new functionality, that becomes kind of cumbersome. So a lot of apps are now designed to be dynamic in that even the display that you end up getting is kind of generated and controlled by the server that you connect to. Mm-hmm. And so that way Uber can just make a change on their back end, and the new functionality shows up in the app without having to resubmit it to the Apple Store.
I have an app that I use that the developer on the server can change a parameter, and the order of the settings menu in my app will readjust.
Yeah.
Icons can change around everything.
They have an API that says, give me all the settings, and then it draws that or whatever. So here, Nathan Mock, who's an iOS engineer, doesn't work at Apple, but builds iPhone apps. He was debugging an app that he's building, and he accidentally got a closer glimpse into the Uber's iOS app internals than he intended.
Oh, sure.
He was using a tool called Charles, which is a way to intercept the traffic from the phone, to monitor and analyze the traffic between the client and the server for his app. But it happened to pick up the Uber stuff when he fired up Uber.
Oh, sure.
He was able to create, basically to do kind of like the Superfish type of SSL interception. So Charles would intercept the app and present a fake certificate and then proxy the connection back to the actual Uber.
And then if server. Charles is doing that, Charles gets the data.
See all the data back and forth, and that's how you debug your app.
Yeah. So you can break SSL with Charles, essentially.
If the phone accepts it. So I think when you set it up, you tell your phone to trust the certificate from Charles.
Right, yeah.
And he says this effectively allowed him to view the requests in plain text that were going back and forth between the Uber app and the Uber web server. And he noticed that there was one request being made every 5 seconds, which honestly seems a bit aggressive and a waste of your data plan. But,
yeah, and battery life.
Mm-hmm. But one particular request of interest was used by Uber to receive and communicate the rider location, driver availability, application configuration settings, and more. While looking at it, he saw that there was actually a parameter in there called isAdmin, and it was set to false. So one of the things Charles can do is rewrite rules where it will change a certain bit of text in the messages as they go back and forth. So he changed all the isAdmin equals false to isAdmin equals true in his rewrite rule. So now as it's going back and forth, the message is getting changed slightly. So now when he fired up the Uber app, he had an employee settings screen if he went into the About screen that had all these options to, create a fake writer or fake driver or do all kinds of things that you wouldn't normally be able to do, right? Because the Uber app is very dynamic, the client's architecture allows you to customize the UI to get, so that if you're in a certain geographic area, you see a different UI entirely, or if you're a writer versus a driver and so on, or even change how it looks on a different device, right? Depending how big your screen is, maybe that's how many columns will show up or whatever, And it also allows them to, they've experimented with doing stuff other than trips, right? They have deliver kittens or deliver food or offer rides in helicopters with Uber, or all that, and we've seen them change prices and so on, all without having to resubmit their application to the App Store. So it's common functionality. But the thing is that it seems that the Uber app doesn't really do much verification. It just trusts that what it's getting back is actually from the real Uber server when it's not necessarily going to be. If a malicious developer wanted to get a forbidden feature or function past the review team at Apple, they could do something like this as well. So maybe Apple needs to crack down on it as well. But they're saying, so as you can see, your traffic is not 100% safe, and anyone can inspect your requests and responses, even when they're over HTTPS, especially if, on the end device, they can trick it. It seems like the Uber app should be verifying the SSL certificate and being like, hey, this isn't a real signed one.
I think so, right?
But if it's doing that through the operating system's mechanism or whatever,
I suppose
then,
so.
If you've gone and installed the Charles certificate into your phone, then that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose so.
The bigger question is, could you use this to present a fake certificate to someone's phone where you hadn't installed something special on their phone and be able to intercept something? But anyway, so it definitely seems like Uber should do a little bit more to make sure they're talking to the real Uber.
Yeah, because they're kind of making a lot of assumptions.
Flag there.
Yeah.
More importantly, does this allow you to? Does the API in the app not do enough verification where you might be able to actually push things into the system as if you were an employee when you're not?
Right. All right. And the other thing I saw that was interesting there is like it also allowed you to change what server the client was connecting to from production to something else. I wonder what kind of fun you could have with that. That might be interesting. Yep. Yeah, I suppose as these as this is what, like, you can understand though from Uber's standpoint, they needed to do something because every time they want to make a small change, they can't wait around for Apple to review it for a week or two or three.
Especially when they want to do something, if it's like trend jacking or something, they want to hop on some hype, they can't wait 3-4 weeks for Apple to approve it.
Right, or they want to run something for 3 days and they want to remove it from the app, and so they got to do something. So I'm not dogging them for doing that, but what it seems to be is essentially they just look for that. They don't
have the level of defensive programming required to not necessarily just trust everything we get from the server.
Right. It's like if you just get that is admin equals yes, then I'm good.
Yep. Yeah. That specifically is the thing we're complaining about.
Interesting though, because Growing Pains, I suppose they're early. They're a new company.
But right. We obviously couldn't go without mentioning the other part too. Uber recently. What did I write there?
They had the database breach that exposed information of 50,000 drivers.
I was reading what I had written and trying to figure out what I actually meant.
Oh,
suffered. Uber recently suffered, not suggered, a data breach and leaked information about 50,000 of their drivers.
Yeah.
The disturbing part about this is that the breach occurred in May 13th of 2014.
Yay.
Uber didn't discover it until September of 2014.
Oh.
And they didn't announce it until February 27th of 2015.
Uh-oh.
So, if that new, was it 30 or 90 days to disclose data breach law came out, they would be well in violation of that. But the worst one is just that it took them so long to even find out that it happened. And I quoted this just because it's like practically a meme in TechSNAP now. Uber says it will offer free 1-year membership to Experian's Protect My ID alert system.
Good. Oh, that solves everything then.
Yes. And so what's interesting is Ars has an article here talking about some of the more detail that's come out since then. It turns out Uber might have accidentally stored sensitive database keys and API keys on a public GitHub page.
No.
And that's how the attackers got into their database.
No.
So now Uber is subpoenaing GitHub to get the IP addresses of everyone who looked at that page, because they have the IP addresses they think belong to the attacker, and they want to see if that same IP address viewed the page with the keys on it. I really suspect that if someone broke into their API and did these queries, that they didn't do it from their own computer, without some VPNs or some Tor or something. But it's interesting that they're basically trying to put the blame on GitHub. It was their fault. They posted the keys on GitHub, but now they're saying, GitHub has to help them find out who accessed it. And it's like, well, if I'm GitHub, I probably don't have logs of every page view going back to May of 2014.
Or you have some serious storage and a real nice search system too.
And also a privacy policy that allows us to just give this out to anybody for no reason.
Yeah, I guess that too. Yeah, that's a little naive, I suppose. Wow. Well, yeah, like I said, Uber, I think, as a company is going to be interesting to follow because they're moving really fast, and mistakes like this are going to come up from time to time.
Yeah, and they obviously have their own legal battles with private companies and so on, and,
which keeps them distracted as well.
But it's hard to say which way it's supposed to go there. I can kind of see the argument from both sides. Yeah. The innovation and stuff is good, but you can't just be like, oh, we're a technology company and we're innovating, so we don't have to follow any of the existing laws.
And they preferred if you call it innovative disruption. Gotta get disruption.
Yes. They're disrupting the industry. It's like, sure, but that doesn't mean you don't have to have insurance.
Well, there's that.
All
right. Good story, though. Thank you, Alan. I'll tell you about something that I know about, DigitalOcean. I know about DigitalOcean. I'd like you to know about them, too. Use our promo code SNAPOcean. That's one word, lowercase, SNAPOcean, and you'll get a $10 credit. In fact, one of the things I think is great about DigitalOcean is you can just go apply it and you get an account balance. So I have 4 PayPal accounts, and one of them I have attached to my Steam account, and that's the one where I have a couple extra dollars, and sometimes it's not enough to buy a Steam game or something. I just apply it to my DigitalOcean balance, and it just keeps it running. It's really slick. So when you use SnapOcean, you'll get a $10 credit. You apply that to your DigitalOcean account. You can try out their $5 rig for free for 2 months. Why? It's really, truly a simple cloud hosting provider, and they are dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own cloud server. You can get started in less than 55 seconds, and pricing plans are only $5 a month. So the $10 credit gets you 2 months for free. It gets you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of freaking transfer. And I'll tell you, data centers, they got them. They got them in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London, multiple data centers and locations, and they're hot. They're good-looking data centers. But what really is hot is that interface. It really is something. It's simple, yet very powerful. It gives you access to things like, obviously, the creation of the droplets, destruction of the droplets, backing them up, snapshot management, DNS management. You get full-feature DNS management. Allows you to easily manage your domains. You can do servers from existing snapshots. I love doing that as sort of a template and start to get me started and going really quick.
Snapshot it and then clone that.
Oh, yeah, buddy.
Hold the machine out of it.
Oh, yeah.
That makes like forking your computer or your server.
It makes it so much faster to get going. And also another big time saver is their one-click installs for a lot of great software packages like GitLab and Docker. And, I talk about it a lot, but you really should go see it for yourself. Go check out DigitalOcean's community section. They have up right now some of their highlighted community articles, Apache versus Nginx, practical considerations, how to set up Node.js on Ubuntu 14.04, using systemctl to manage systemd. And then they also have all these great tutorials, like how to configure Nginx as a reverse proxy. Well, how many times have we talked about that?
Lots.
And on DigitalOcean with their private networking, that's seriously something you should consider because you could save yourself a lot of money and have a good, secure, fast setup. How to install secure PHPMyAdmin on your droplet if you need to use PHPMyAdmin for MySQL. Logstash on CentOS 7. And then they have all these projects that integrate with their API. There's so much good stuff. There's lots and lots and lots of projects out there. Really good apps for your mobile device. It's insane. There's so much stuff you can take advantage of, and you get started for free for 2 months when you use the promo code SNAPOcean. That's a $10 credit. Try out the $5 rig for free. Go deploy a FreeBSD instance. Go deploy a CoreOS instance. All really cool technologies you can play with on super fast hardware connected to Tier 1 bandwidth. DigitalOcean.com, SnapOcean. You guys, it's a lot of fun. Go check them out. SnapOcean. And normally I would plug BSD Now right now and just say, hey, go check it out because this is a good spot to do a download. Obviously, still the case. Alan just mentioned they have a great BSD now that sounds like it's one not to miss. I'll give a plug because we've had a couple of BSD developers also on Women's Tech Radio. We've also had some IX Systems folks on Women's Tech Radio, and they just probably by this time this episode came out, episode 17. Episode 16, though, just came out the week we're recording, featured an Intel developer who's creating neuro-controlled robots.
Ooh,
yeah, pretty neat.
Fancy.
So that was episode 16 of Women's Tech Radio. Go check out the new show on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, hosted by my wife Angela and Paige, who is a developer herself and has lots of interesting insights. Alan, with the news all done, it means it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at techsnap.reddit.com. And our first email today, Alan, I love it. This one from Simon is like fully decked out with diagrams, including a stick figure. And he says, "Hello, guys."
I love the stick figure.
I know. Totally unneeded, but awesome. That's Simon. That's Simon right there. Yeah. He says, "I have a question about my iSCSI network. I've got a setup like this." And he shows us a PC going into a 1 gig port, and then an ESXi NIC going into a 1 gig port, a NAS NIC going into 1 gig port, another ESXi, and another NAS NIC.
So basically his ESX machine and his NAS each have 2 NICs. One is in the client VLAN, which also includes his PC, and the second one is in a separate VLAN where he's just doing his iSCSI traffic, and he's basically creating a SAN.
He's doing this on a Cisco SG226.
Yeah.
So he says, both my ESXi and FreeNAS have 2 NICs, all of them some sort of Intel. The idea is to have a separate gigabit iSCSI network where I can do jumbo frames if I want. This one is completely local and without a gateway, and one client network for accessing Sambas and VMs. This works fine. I saturate my PC NIC to NAS NIC and ESXi NIC easily when I copy files back and forth. However, when I do a file copy to a VM with its disk located on the iSCSI target on the NAS, I get a max 500 megabits. When I check VMware and FreeNAS, they say the same, 500 megabits. Same goes for the file copy from a VM on a local ESXi storage to a VM on the iSCSI data store. He goes on to say a little bit more. He actually even included, look at that, traffic graph snapshots, which is great.
So it looks like, the one is showing the traffic on his...
He says, I know my FreeNAS can do a lot quicker, so that's not the bottleneck. So what do you guys think it is? And he included some specs here. The FreeNAS rig is pretty good. FreeNAS 9.3. Cat6 cabling, 16 gigabytes of RAM.
So what he's saying is if he's copying a file from his desktop machine to the NAS over Samba or something, he actually maxes out the whole gigabit. But when he tries to do it over the iSCSI, he's running into a bottleneck where he's only getting half the speed.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's exactly half, I'm just wondering if there's something...
Like on the switch?
Well, no, it's more that, is it something where he's actually using a gigabit on the NIC, but is limited? Like, if the routing or something is causing the problem? Like, as if the traffic is actually going through the gateway and then back, and so that NIC is actually topping out at 500 megabits?
Yeah, if it has to do that.
If
it has to do that, yeah.
Although it's not how he's intending to have it set up, so I'm just wondering what's actually happening. It's really hard to debug a problem like this without being able to, stick your eyes in the different positions.
So what kind of tools could we kind of give him to kind of play around with, maybe on the FreeBSD side or something? Is there anything there like he could throw on the FreeNAS box?
Yeah, if
there's a way to install it.
One is to run gstat, which lets you look at the disks and make sure they're not maxed out or something. The biggest one is, I'm wondering, if basically the problem is that if his iSCSI that's topping out at that speed, that it might actually just be the disk, because the way it's reading and writing, that it might just not be able to do it, but that doesn't seem very likely.
Is there another type of transfer he could set up as a test over that same network? Maybe set something else up?
It won't be included in the FreeNAS, so you would have to create a FreeBSD jail on the FreeNAS and run it in there. But there's a program called iPerf.
Oh, sure, yeah. That's
and
exactly
it allows you to just test network performance.
Yeah.
And then if you just did the iPerf over the iSCSI VLAN NIC or whatever, and make sure that has a good chance to let you see to confirm that the second NIC is actually going to be able to push that traffic. Sometimes it depends on the setup, but my first instinct was that one of the NICs was on board and one was in a PCI slot or something.
Sure.
And I've actually seen that where the onboard one, because it's actually connected to our PCIe, can do the gigabit.
Yeah.
But the PCI one tops out at like 600 megabits.
Yeah. Like on a 1X slot or
since
something?
they're both I210s, I'm guessing they're both onboard built-in PCI Express. So, but yeah, there's a couple of different places you'd want to look. But yeah, to debug this, you almost have to be watching while the file copy is happening and try to figure out which is the bottleneck. It kind of goes back to that benchmarking interview we did with Ben and Greg on BSD Now, where it was like the most important question to ask is always why. So it's like, okay, so it's topping out at 500 megabits. Why? And then keep looking into, and why is that the limit and why and so on. One thing to try is just switching which NICs are which and see. But one interesting one might be to try is make a new iSCSI volume or whatever and mount it on the PC and see if you can write to it at a gigabit over the client VLAN interface.
Yeah.
And so on.
I like that.
But also, he didn't exactly explain some of when he was doing the copies. I think one was from the PC to a VM on the ESXi. Mm-hmm. And then the other one was, I think, 2 VMs that are both on the ESXi, one where the file's on the local storage in the ESX and one where it's trying to write to the iSCSI. In that case, the network traffic is only going to be going in one direction, and it seems like it should work properly.
I agree. Yeah.
The problem is, I guess, you can't get some of the tools that I would normally use to do that on the ESXi or even on the FreeNAS because it's an appliance. Although you could probably do it in the jail. Like I would use like nload to get real-time stats on what's going in and out of each of the NICs. Being that he's got the fairly fancy Cisco switch, one thing you can do is set up a monitor port where, an extra port on that switch there hooked up to a laptop or a PC or something, and it would clone all the traffic going in and out of one of those ports, and then basically you run Wireshark and you get to see all the traffic that's going into the NAS iSCSI NIC and see if there's anything not looking quite right or whatever.
There you go. I hope that helps because, that's kind of an ambiguous problem, but I think those are good troubleshooting
But yeah, it could be just because of the small block size or something of the iSCSI or what. But normally you should be able to definitely get a gigabit out of your iSCSI, so it's hard to say what's going on there. Just the fact that it's like exactly 500 megabits is kind of suggesting that something might be where the traffic is basically having to be duplicated or copied.
Mm-hmm. All right, this next one is kind of like since we're doing a pre-recorded, I thought let's use this opportunity to pull behind the curtain, look back there, and answer maybe a question that somebody's had out in the audience. Nixeltux writes in and says, I was wondering what program do you guys use for the video chat on the show? Is it Skype? And if it is, why? What are the options out there for a good audio-video client for Linux and BSD? And then there is, of course, a pursuing conversation about it. But, Alan, people have wanted to know what we use. I think people think it looks pretty good. It's looked better than it does right now, but it works.
Yeah, you switch the machine to Linux and it doesn't work as well anymore.
It's true. That is true. But, I had a Hackintosh on there, and then I didn't change the hardware at all, but I changed from the Hackintosh, and Enrique put Ubuntu Mate Edition on there for me, long-term support, and because we were having some stability issues with the Hackintosh. Mac OS was just locking up a couple times, or a lot towards the end. But yeah, one of the things is we can't do 16:9 video now under Linux.
All of a sudden,
Skype.
for some reason.
Yeah. With LAS, we're using Jitsi. We're going to talk a lot about that on this.
Now, we tried that one episode of TechSNAP and it didn't work, but you guys have fiddled with it some more.
Yeah, well, we ended up just totally, when we first, we're going to talk about this on LAS a little bit. When we first rolled it out, we were riding on top of the Google Talk infrastructure, which is not a good idea because that's about to be shut down. So, and it was, as you noticed, extremely problematic. So, Noah just spun up an XMPP server and an ICE server on a DigitalOcean droplet, and now we just bounce off that.
Does the traffic all have to bounce off of that?
Not once it's established, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it just bounces the connection off of that first, and then ba-ding, and it does a direct connection. And he's able to send me, anything. We just set whatever values we want. It's very buggy. Jitsi is not production ready. I frequently have to reboot to get the video to work. Sometimes it'll crash. So there's a lot of problems, but it is totally free.
The odd time we have problems with Skype, but generally it does seem to actually work.
Yeah, and Skype still...
Part of it is we started with Skype because 208 weeks or 206 weeks ago, it was what there was.
And I would still argue when Skype is working at its best, it's still the best. Jitsi lets you set Opus, and you can have high quality codec, but the thing is in my opinion, even up against Opus, Skype still sounds better.
Yes. Now, if only Skype let me just set the bit rate and lock it, we'd be perfectly happy with it.
Yeah, and if I could do 16:9 under Linux, I would be much happier.
I don't know why that doesn't. And you've had it working under Linux in 16:9
in the
just
past.
Not with that
previous versions of Skype have done it. Yeah, just not 4.3.
Yeah. Is it 4.3 or the fact that it's a different video card now than the other machine?
I went back to my machine that did have 16:9 video, and it no longer has 16:9 video.
Possible Microsoft's just being like, nah, screw Linux.
Yeah, Jitsi does run inside a JVM. That's part of the reasons why it's a bit slow. But Jitsi is a multi-network client, and if you set up your own XMPP server, it can handle some really great video. It is a really great system if you don't mind a little bugginess.
With podcasting being so popular, it almost seems like you would think by now somebody would have come up with something, even based on like an implementation using the same stuff, just with a...
What I would love is like...
I kind of remember Google Hangout Studio thing.
Yeah.
Did that ever actually happen?
I don't know. I think there is some stuff. But what I really would like is something like Jitsi or Skype. Like we do this call, and in the background, it's recording on your side automatically. You don't have to set anything up. I control all the parameters. I control the bit rate, all of that. And then when it's done, it uses like some sort of BitTorrent sync or something to send me the files. Like when we hang up, your client just starts transmitting me the local recordings. And then we could have double enders where you could have a local recording and I would have a local recording, and then we would just match them up. Be really cool. And it could do the time sync. It would have the time code in there and all that kind of stuff. That's what podcasters need. If there was just a program that just did this and also recorded it and then sent that file to the podcaster.
Yeah, or even just if it all got recorded on your end, but each participant's audio was a separate track.
Yeah, that'd be nice too. Yeah.
So,
the nice thing about the nice thing about the local recording is when the guest Skype kind of gets a little wonky.
The local recording will still be perfect.
Yeah, so that's nice. But other than that, I would take separate tracks too. All right, our last question actually it's not even so much a question, I just wanted to show this to you because I thought it was really cool. Squiggly wrote in, he said, I just wanted to share something cool. I collected old aging rigs, some date back to the early 80s, and I get warm, fuzzy feelings when I manage to install a modern OS on them, typically a BSD or Linux. I recently got an iMac G4, the ones with the IBM Power PC chips in them, in mint condition. He said, I removed the Mac OS whatever that was on there, and I started installing OpenBSD, which I immediately then replaced that with FreeBSD 10.1. After 48 hours of compiling Xorg, Fluxbox, and Firefox, I was able to get it working. He says, keep up the awesome work you're doing. And I want to show it to you because I don't know if you remember these old...
Yes, part of it is... Yeah, that'd be PowerPC then, right?
Yes. So and I don't know if you remember these old iMacs, but they're the ones that are these lamp style. Right, so
lamp style.
Yeah, look, you see, so it's like a lamp.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
it
what
looks like it's a anthropomorphized version of that IKEA lamp commercial.
Yeah, isn't it? So he has that running FreeBSD 10.1 now. Yeah. And the thing is that's actually, it's aesthetically, I used to have one. I mean, they are aesthetically I was very impressed with the design of this computer, and they're silent too, which is nice. So you just have this really cool, and this screen is totally free floating. So the screen comes up or down, and you can fold it up or push it up. It's really neat. So to have a modern operating system on there would be a real treat.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an official repository for PowerPC, so you wouldn't have to actually compile that stuff for 2 days.
He says
I think there's a couple of unofficial ones, but I thought PowerPC was.
He says there's no PowerPC package repos out there for him. He says.
I think a couple of people have them, but they're
probably
private and probably not up to date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. It's neat to be able to take because of course the BSD and Linux have these like things like Fluxbox, which really take very minimal resources, and then you can run a modern Firefox install and have a completely up to date web browsing computer. If you took that same iMac and installed probably the latest thing it would run is like some very early version of OS 10. It wouldn't be able to.
Well, if it's PowerPC, OS 10 did support PowerPC for a little while.
Yeah, but early, right? And so it was like 6 years ago, and so. You would not be able to get the most modern secure web browser. You would have to run an old insecure web browser on that machine. So it's really cool that these free operating systems can do that with something that is otherwise a very functional piece of equipment. All right, so we need your emails. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click that contact link, and then choose TechSNAP from the drop-down and send your emails into the show. We want them. And you can also do the subreddit, techsnap.reddit.com. We'll be back live next week and answering your questions. So now is a better time than ever to get them into us because we've gone through our inbox. But with the feedback segment all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Round Up. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't quite fit at the top of the show, but we still wanted to give you some links to follow up on your own after the show. And a lot of these links came from our subreddit over at techsnap.reddit.com. I was about to give the old address, techsnap.reddit.com. And our first Roundup story sounds like it came right out of the movies. Iranian hackers breach a U.S. casino, says the U.S. What do you have any info on this one, Ellen?
No, I didn't have time to read the story. That's why it's in the roundup.
Yeah, exactly. So the James Clapper was to be interviewed. This is what I know. And he said this was a damaging attack on the Sands Las Vegas Corporation in 2014. He mentioned it while testifying during the Senate Armed Services Committee this week. So we don't really know much more than that. The attack has made headlines because it was said to be linked to Iran. A destructive cyber attack is what he called it. That's what we know.
Destructive.
There's pretty much nothing else to it. There's pretty much no other deeds to it.
Yes, I'm sure they lost some money.
Hey, Alan, great news for you. Nginx has detailed their supports for HTTP 2. I'm sure you're stoked.
No, I'm not a fan of HTTP 2.
I know.
And
I was teasing.
Neither is Nginx.
I was teasing you. Oh, really?
Saying, yeah, they're like, we understand this is going to be the standard, whatever, but it'll be next year before it's ready. Even though they have current support for Speedy, some of the differences, and basically Speedy was just a module kind of tacked on to Nginx, whereas support for HTTP 2 is basically going to require them to change the way the web server works quite a bit. Nearly
95% of the websites that use Speedy were using Nginx.
Yes. And the other 5% were run by Google.
So I guess they were all in on Speedy then.
Well, they were the only ones that had Speedy, but they're not that interested in getting it.
Okay.
The chat room asked why I don't like HTTP 2. It's mostly that it doesn't really solve any problems. It's basically just the industry adopting Google's way of doing it, not actually having come up with a good standard that actually solves the problems. It fixes a couple things and deals with like pipelining and so on, but it doesn't really actually solve the privacy problem or the security problem, or
it's too much of a half solution.
Yeah. And basically, mostly the standards process just broke down and just became, well, we have this thing from Google and nobody can agree on a different one, so we'll just go with that.
That's disappointing.
It seems like it's like, how about we wait a little longer and actually come up with a real solution?
Yeah. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yep.
Okay, our next roundup story. I love this full screen Facebook ad. This next story comes from Fusion.net. This guy's light bulb performed a denial of service attack on his entire smart house. Look at that! They have this great animation in the article where you can see the lights flipping on and off. Yes. I think this is.
This is in 2009. Raul Rojas, a computer science professor at the Free University of Berlin, and also the robot soccer team's coach, built one of Germany's first smart homes. Everything in the house was connected to the internet so that lights, music, television, heating, and cooling could all be turned on and off from afar.
Cool.
Even the stove, oven, and microwave could be turned off with his computer, which prevented some potential panic attacks about leaving an appliance on after exiting the house, and so on. He said one of the few things not connected were the locks, obviously. Although automated locks bought in 2009 were still sitting in a drawer waiting to be installed. He says, I'm afraid of not being able to open the door, so he hadn't installed it yet. But apparently there was a problem with some of the light bulbs, and it caused problems.
Yeah, the computer control systems just kind of went haywire, I guess, huh? He says, nothing worked. I couldn't turn the lights on or off. It just got stuck. It was like the beach ball of death began for my whole house.
I connected my laptop to the network and looked at the traffic and saw that one unit was sending packets continuously. He realized that his light fixture had burned out and was trying to tell the hub that it needed attention. To do so, it was sending continuous requests that had overloaded the network and caused it to freeze. It was a classic denial of service attack.
Yeah, on his own system.
Yeah. The light bulb was just like change me, like at it.
And then the
controls
control software just loses it.
Yeah,
denial of service.
And it just couldn't handle the request rate. It definitely seems like the light bulb only needs to say change me, once every hour, maybe, or even 10 minutes or something. Not thousands of times a second.
Because it's not the end of the world if the light bulb goes out. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about CPUs. I love talking about Intel CPUs. They've revealed unlocked socketed Broadwell CPUs and Core i7 NUCs. Oh, baby.
So the big difference is, a socket version of an i7 is not a big news. The big news is that it will have the Iris Pro graphics, which are only available with soldered processors before.
Yes, that's so good.
So this is their highest end graphics stuff that'll be available on an i7. Not many i7s usually even have embedded graphics, do they?
Well, they have just the real basics graphics. Yeah,
only some of the models, right?
Most i7s
rely on you having. Most i7s rely on you having.
I don't know about i7s. Right? Yeah, maybe not.
I'm not sure about i7s. I'm pretty sure my i7 doesn't have a video card, and that I have to use an external one, but maybe not. Anyway,
what a weird world we live in.
Iris Pro fancy graphics card will now be available on the Broadwell i7s, and they're also announcing an i7 NUC. I think before now the highest NUC was an i5, right?
Yeah, unless you went like with a gigabyte model that they've done some custom build ones.
Yeah, so they have a slower power. So the socketed i7s I think are 64 watts, and the new NUC soldered ones will be I think 48 watts or something. I think some of the stats are there.
Great.
Anyway, fancy i7 NUC is pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, we use the NUC. So when we were talking about our setups, Alan's calling in on a NUC right now. He's on the machine here in the studio takes him out.
And when I do BSD now, I'm using a NUC here, an i5 one that Chris Skypes into, and I do some hackery with analog and digital stuff to get the sound where I want it.
Yeah, but it works.
And then I have another i3 in the living room that I use for my TV. Currently, mostly out of laziness, I haven't recreated the shots in my Wirecast, so when I pull websites, it's still coming from an old Pentium D in the living room. But the plan is to throw that one into the basement somewhere and never use it again because it's Pentium D, and pull the shots off the i3 NUC out there. So my show would then consist of my tower and 2 NUCs.
Yeah,
I just haven't recreated the shots yet.
I use an i5 NUC at home running Arch as like our home Plex and BitTorrent sync, and I could use an i7 sometimes when we have a couple of transcoding streams going on. That i5 is kind of pushed to the limit right now, so maybe a couple more cores wouldn't hurt. All right, next story on the roundup: MySQL 5.7 an HTTP plugin for MySQL. What? It's official. It's legit.
Yeah, MySQL 5.7 looks like it will include an HTTP server built into it.
That blows my mind.
I'm just going to leave that here.
Yeah, okay.
And we're going to talk about the security problems with it sometime in the future.
Okay.
I guarantee there will be some. So
what could go wrong? What could go wrong?
But basically, this provides a JSON interface to access data. So it's basically their competition to NoSQL type things. It has a couple different ways. You can just use that as a key value store and pull out whole JSON documents off the key. Or it has a way to actually just rewrite an SQL statement as a URL and it will execute it.
Wow.
What could go wrong there? And a couple different things. The biggest question is how well is that going to scale? Like the web server built into the HTTP or into the MySQL, is that really going to scale better than using Nginx in front of it or something? But I think their point was it might help rapid application development, so that instead of writing an app that makes an API call to a PHP script that then connects to the database, when you could just have the API endpoint actually be the database. The question is, how do you do strong authentication in that case, honestly? But
yeah, I am actually kind of blown away by this. I mean, I guess I can see the use cases, but yeah.
I think mostly it was Postgres has had something like this for a long time. And, there's MongoDB and things like that.
Yeah. All right, our next story in the roundup: Skylight, a window on a shingled disk operation. Now, we've been talking about shingled disk for a little bit.
Yeah, so Seagate invented this shingled magnetic recording, which is normally on a hard drive you have a read and a write head, and the write head is they've both been getting smaller, but the write head is basically hit the smallest it can be, but the read head can be smaller. So they decided what they could do to make new really high capacity drives like 5 and 10 and 12 terabytes was overlap the tracks kind of like shingles on a roof. So when you're reading them, you can read them just fine. When you want to write, though, you have to read all the overlapping bits, pick them up, and then write them back down with the one of them changed and the other one's not. And so these drives have a bit of flash in them to buffer stuff and then read it all. And basically, they kind of become almost like a hybrid drive, but different. The hybrid stuff is all on the write side instead of the read side and so on. And so these guys were doing research into them. I forget which university they're from. And in order to, so they wanted to kind of model how they work and be able to tell what algorithms the drive is using for doing the math and so on by just looking at how long it takes to jump from here to here on the drive and stuff. And so to back up their data, what they actually did was drilled a hole in the top of the drive and put a glass thing so they could see inside of it. And then it captured it with a high-speed camera and watching the head move around and stuff.
Whoa, cool. And they have a video. Let's see if I wonder if I can, wonder if they have...
The video is just of the talk.
Oh, okay. He doesn't actually show them.
They they basically did a series of benchmarks and stuff on 3 emulated SMR drives where they did different algorithms, and then 2 real ones while they were actually watching with the high-speed camera what was actually happening. Mm-hmm. And then be like, oh, this drive matched up with this model, and so this is the algorithm that drive's using, and so on. And they kind of did some tests and found that for desktop-type use, these will look like to be pretty handy. But for some server types of use, it probably won't work out very well.
Surprise, surprise.
Although there are 3 types of SMR. There's drive managed, where the operating system just thinks it's a regular drive. Mm-hmm. Then there's host managed, where the operating system knows it's an SMR drive, and the operating system decides how to do stuff. And then there's kind of a middle ground one. And the talk explains about that a bit too. There's also a attached paper, which might be more useful. The speaker, at least in the very beginning, is struggling a little bit.
But he was awarded best paper.
Yes.
So paper's probably pretty good. Okay.
Well, who wouldn't want to just put a window in a hard drive and capture it with a high-speed camera and see what's going on? That's an ingenious idea. I love it.
Pier 1 declares it. The IT department is dead. Long live the IT department.
Mostly this is talking about back in 2005, the IT department consisted of, new computers come in, you cable them up, and you go around to each computer and install the software. And if there's an update, you had to go to each computer and install it. And now we kind of have these, provisioning and orchestration frameworks, and it doesn't quite work the same anymore.
Yes, that's very true.
And it kind of talks about
changed
some of
a
the
lot.
Big changes that have happened in the last 10 years. And, obviously their whole bent there is towards, you can just pay us to do it now. But
yeah, they give a big plug for software as a service. Well,
they also have infrastructure as a service that they do, where they, if you want to do software as a service, you can rent machines from them, and they'll take care of everything that happens at the data center, and then you just take from, you install the operating system and set up the server and go from there. Or they have one where they manage the servers for you, but that's less useful. And if you're trying to do your own software as a service, probably. But anyway.
Okay, our next roundup story comes from the FreeBSD Foundation.
Yes. So they have a FreeBSD from the Trenches series that they've started.
Love it.
And it's a war story. So I thought TechSNAP loves a war story.
Yeah, we do.
So Glenn Barber, who's the current release engineer, but also on the clustered bin team, which is the team of people at FreeBSD that manage the cluster of servers, has an article about building a ZFS foot cannon, or how he shot himself in the foot while using ZFS.
Hilarious.
It's a pretty good story.
Oh my goodness. I can only imagine that there's so many ways you could ruin your life by deleting data.
Yeah. Well, in this case, he ended up with 2 different Z pools with the same name on the same drive, and basically it manifested as he rebooted the machine, and then it came back up and it was empty, and he was like,
It's a good one that's a good one to read through. I'm going to add that to my Instapaper queue right now, Alan. I love that. Okay, our last story in the roundup this week. A farming attack targets home router DNS settings. Oh boy, talk about seeing this one coming. This one comes from ThreatPost.
Yes, we've kind of talked about this before, but this is... it actually happening in another case.
And this, remember what we really kind of said was this makes so much sense that these routers, not only are they getting out of date and they're running very complex operating systems with a lot of remote access features that can be tricked to be turned on. So this is a compounding problem. At the same time, while that trend is happening, the trend where people are using mobile devices, Android, iOS, iPad tablets, they're not on devices like Windows devices that would traditionally get the malware, the more traditional route. So now there's even more incentive to take over somebody's router and alter their DNS, because if you alter their DNS, then every single device on the network gets tricked going into the wrong place, regardless of malware, regardless if it's Android or iOS or a Mac or Linux or Windows. And so you take over the router and you get way more stuff. So it's not surprising we're seeing this coming.
So like in this, I remember the original example we talked about, it was if you send a spam email and if somebody opened it on their iPhone or iPad, it would auto-load images. And so you make a bunch of image links in the email that are actually going to the router's website with the default IP and default usernames and passwords. And so you just put like 20 images at the bottom of this email, and it would try the 20 most common usernames and passwords on a couple of the common IP addresses, like 192.168.0.1 and 1.1 and 0.254 and 1.254, all the common ones.
Maybe 10.1.10.1 or whatever.
Exactly. And log in with the passwords admin password, admin link sys, admin d-link or whatever. And then, you could post data there and change the DNS.
Yeah. So not only does Kaspersky watch these pretty closely, we've covered some of their coverage back in September on the show, but Proofpoint yesterday reported that also a new range of attacks happening in Brazil. Last time we talked about it was also happening in Brazil. This new range of attacks that they saw yesterday also happening in Brazil. They say the campaign was carried out during a 5-week period starting in December when Proofpoint started the phishing messages. Fewer than 100 were sent to customers. Exactly the kind of messages you're talking about, Alan, right there in Brazil.
Yep.
So I don't know. Keep your eye out for that kind of thing. Alan, does that bring us to the end of 205?
Yep.
Wow, I can't wait to hear how Asia BSDCon went for you.
Yes.
Take some pictures. You never take enough pictures, and now that you have a Nexus 6...
I actually have a phone that can take
exactly
now, so I will actually try to take a couple of pictures.
Good man.
I just won't think of it, though.
Yeah, I know. That's true. But it's always fun to go through them when you're over there. And then I get super jelly. I follow you on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, Alan. And you take pictures of food, and I'm jealous.
I don't.
I know,
usually.
But people do.
Yes.
You could, and it would make me jealous, I'm saying. That'd be great. I want to live vicariously
through
through
the only thing I've taken a picture of, EuroBSDCon 2 years ago, I took a picture of the dessert because it was just so amazing.
I'm glad you didn't say something else, Alan. I'm glad you didn't say something else. So we will be back live next week at jblive.tv. Now, the time is all changing because of the time zones, but go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. The calendar will automatically render it in your local time zone.
It'll be 2000 UTC, but remember that if you're in North America, your daily savings times will have changed, but if you're in Euro or anywhere else, your time zone won't change until after the next episode.
Right.
Or before.
We have to do
George
this twice
W.
a year.
Bush ruined the internet.
I know. I hate it. And it has been a mess ever since. It's ruined it for podcasters.
It's like 2 weeks at the beginning, 2 weeks in the spring and 2 weeks in the fall. The entire time zones are just...
And you might think to yourself, why do they go to so much trouble trying to describe this to us? Because it is awesome when you show up live. You get way more show. Like, especially today. You get a lot more show today because we just did a double recording session. But when we take the breaks and you hear that crazy music here in the studio, we're still chatting with the chat room. We're getting up. We're scratching. We're getting food. We're talking about stuff, fixing stuff. So it's a good time. And then you also get to help title the show. In fact, chat room, last chance to bang suggest. So we'd love to have you join us live. If you can't, we've got RSS feeds. Go grab one. You get the show automatically every single week, even including torrents, if you'd like to help distribute some of that bandwidth cost. And last but not least, go help make the show better on our subreddit, techsnap.reddit.com. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you right back here next week.